They don't want you to see this, not because the images are too painful, but because once you begin to notice the gaps, the omissions, the strange coincidences, you can't go back. The day you think you know, September 11th, 2001, may not be the day that really happened. What you carry in your memory could be a construction, a stage set, a carefully orchestrated performance designed to shock, paralyze, and rewrite the way you see the world forever. Think about it. For many people alive at the time, the first images of the event didn't come from a window or from the street. They came from television. And television doesn't just show reality, it edits it, frames it, shapes it. Every second you saw that day was mediated. And some people believe those seconds were rehearsed long before the morning arrived. Consider this. Weeks before the towers collapsed, unusual activity was recorded inside them. Entire floors were evacuated under the excuse of maintenance work. But according to survivors, the work didn't look like normal repairs. Strange crews, not wearing typical construction uniforms, carried heavy equipment into freight elevators, large pallets, sealed crates. Night after night, the sounds of drilling and hammering echoed through empty hallways. Some employees swore they saw wiring snaking across walls, but when they asked about it, they were told it was cabling upgrades. Later, those same employees were too traumatized or too afraid to ever speak again. And then there's the money. What if I told you billions were tied to that day? That the largest insurance payout in history was triggered by the towers collapse, benefiting only a handful of men who had recently acquired ownership of the complex? What if I told you that, just 24 hours before the attacks, the Pentagon reported trillions, yes, trillions, missing from its budget, money that could never be accounted for, conveniently hidden beneath the chaos of the next day, a disappearance of currency that matched, almost poetically, the disappearance of human lives. The official story says hijackers boarded commercial planes, but when you look closely at the passenger lists, questions emerge. Some names don't appear on airline manifests. Some so-called terrorists were later found alive, living in other countries, confused at seeing their faces broadcast across the world as culprits. Were they scapegoats, chosen for convenience, or placeholders, stand-ins for a narrative that needed to be airtight? And let's not forget the strange financial movements in the days leading up to the tragedy. Unprecedented amounts of put options, financial bets that a stock will drop, were placed against major airlines directly involved. It was as if someone already knew what was coming, someone who stood to profit from the collapse of more than just buildings. Now look at the images again. Not the famous ones you've seen 1,000 times, but the obscure clips, the shaky amateur footage. In some, you'll notice flashes at the moment of impact. In others, the sound of explosions deep within the towers, recorded minutes before their fall. Firefighters themselves testified that they heard secondary blasts echoing through stairwells. These weren't the words of conspiracy theorists. They were the words of first responders. Words quickly buried under official reports. And then there's Building 7, the shadow in plain sight. No plane touched it, yet it fell, neatly, symmetrically, at freefall speed. Mainstream outlets replayed it once, maybe twice, then moved on. Because how do you explain a skyscraper crumbling into dust without admitting that something else was at play? Independent demolition experts called it impossible. Yet the impossible happened, live, on camera. Some say it wasn't just demolition, that it was erasure. WTC7 contained officers of the CIA, the IRS, the Secret Service, records of investigations into corporate fraud, money laundering, insider trading, all gone in seconds. What better way to cleanse the slate than to let the building itself vanish? And then, silence. A silence that wasn't natural. Survivors speak of it. Just before the towers fell, the air changed. A low-frequency hum, metallic, vibrating through their bones. A sound not of collapse, but of something else. Something hidden. Could it have been an experimental weapon? A directed energy system, designed to weaken steel without fire? The theory was dismissed as fantasy, yet those who were there remember the sensation, and their testimonies align. Do you think it's coincidence that military exercises were being run at the very same moment? Simulations of hijacked planes, confusing the defense network, scattering jets away from where they were needed most. Pilots were left asking, is this real, or part of the drill? And in the delay, the towers fell. Too many coincidences begin to form a pattern. And patterns tell you the story no one wants you to hear. And what about the family connections? While the nation was locked down, while skies were closed, one group was quietly allowed to leave. The Bin Laden family, flown out under protection, even as their relative was painted as the mastermind. Why? Why did the accused's own blood receive safe passage when ordinary citizens couldn't even board a bus? Unless someone knew the role had already been chosen for Osama long before. Unless someone needed a villain, and his face fit perfectly. You were told 19 men with box cutters brought the world's strongest military to its knees. But think carefully. Does that explanation satisfy you? Or was it designed to? Think of the images burned into your mind. A passport, untouched by flames, found lying in the rubble, miraculously identifying a hijacker. Do you believe that? Steel melted, concrete turned to dust, but a piece of paper survived, pristine, waiting waiting to be discovered at the right moment. Evidence too perfect to be true, and here's the darkest thought. Maybe the towers themselves were never the real target. Maybe the real target was you. Your perception, your memory, your willingness to accept fear in exchange for safety. The world changed overnight. Surveillance expanded. Wars began. Freedoms evaporated. And yet most people accepted it because they had been broken open by trauma. That's why some say September 11th wasn't just an attack. It was a ritual, a psychological initiation, a collective sacrifice broadcast in real time. The images replayed again and again weren't just news. They were incantations, programming you to believe in a reality sculpted by others. And maybe that's why you're watching this now. Because deep down, you know there are missing pieces. You feel the echoes in your body, the headaches, the unease, the sense that something in your timeline isn't aligned. You can dismiss it, or you can pay attention. But if you pay attention, be warned, you may never see the world the same way again. The official story wants you to sleep. But once awake, you begin to see the threads, the insurance payouts, the missing trillions, the erased names, the drills overlapping reality, the family flights, the silence before the fall. And behind all of them, one conclusion. It wasn't just an attack from outside. It was a design from within. If you want to keep unraveling what they hide, don't miss the next transmission. Subscribe now, before this signal is buried. Because information like this doesn't stay accessible forever. It disappears. It's erased. Just like the people, the buildings, the evidence. September 11th is sold to you as the past. But it isn't the past. It's the blueprint. Every new disaster, every new tragedy you watch fits the same rhythm, the same choreography. And if you don't notice the pattern, you remain inside it. So listen carefully. Remember what you weren't supposed to remember. And never forget, the towers fell, but the real collapse was inside you.